Hello and welcome to episode 192 of the Imperial Truth Podcast. I'm Greg. Joining me, as always, is Mr. Howard. Hello, Howard. How are you doing?
I'm doing pretty well, Greg. Doing pretty well. How are you? I'm just preparing myself for what's coming around the corner. How are you doing?
I'm still trying to get rid of this cough, so I will try and edit out as many coughs as possible. Forgive me if I miss the odd one, but we will try and do that for you. I was going to say something else then. Can't remember. I suddenly realised I call you Mr. Howard all the time. I'm wondering if there's a listener out there who's like, I wonder what his first name is. Why does he call him Mr. Howard? Is this some British thing? Am I his Batman? Which is probably another thing I'd have to explain to a non-English person. Not the Batman, but a Batman.
Batsman.
Am I the Samwise Gam? No, it's Batman. Am I the Samwise Gamgee to your Frodo?
Wow,
That is the
wow.
question.
There's a lot of references we can go in with
Mm.
here. But actually, there was someone who in my first year of university, there was someone in my halls whose surname was Howard. And so every time we used to get post or get a note from the post room to say there's mail for Howard, and I'd go, and, oh damn, no, that's not what it is. So I essentially became her butler for delivering her mail from the confusion of that. Similarly, your surname being what
Oh,
a reasonably common Christian name is. I've got that wrong. It is spelled differently, but sounds of a fairly common
there is a
first name.
guy that came to our gaming club who was called Dan, who spelt his name DANN, which was
Oh,
really
really?
strange.
Oh, rare.
My son has now got the same problem where he's
Well, indeed, my surname provides many hours of challenge as well, as it always has. When people suddenly realise what my name is, Mister T, and all hilarity ensues from
yeah,
that.
and I'm Gregory John Dan. So again, like me and him have both got the curse of all our names being fairly common first names and surnames. It's all different
So it can be read in
in
any
any
order
order.
if you so
You
choose.
just answer. Yep. It's worse when people email you and like put in Greg at theimperialtruth.com and write, "Hi Dan." You're like,
Mm, mm.
how? Anyway, that's the most random intro we've done in a very long time. Before we go anywhere,
I don't think we've gone on such a tangent as quickly. This might be our quickest tangent we've ever done. I like that.
Element Games, they are advertising for their Newcastle branch. They
They
are
are.
spreading out, aren't they?
And indeed, there more and more info is coming out about the upcoming grand
Ooh,
opening, I assume, of the
oh,
London
tell me
store.
more, tell me more.
Um, it is when I was at Beachhead, they had a presence there for the first time. They've not. I don't think they've attended in any
No.
significant way. At least they've been a much more significant way this time. And they had a poster up saying opening soon on Drury Lane,
Oh,
no less.
famous Drury
So
Lane.
indeed, a very central location, much more so than I was expecting. I thought they'd be out, they'd have picked one of the compass points and gone out to somewhere the rent is only slightly eye
The
watering,
only
not
thing I know about Drury
incredibly
Lane
eye watering.
is the Muffin Man, I think.
Who lives on Drury Lane? Indeed, it's certainly known,
Indeed.
famous for that.
Oh, the Theatre Royal, of course, yes.
It's number 168 Drury Lane, to be precise, is
It's
where
like
it will be opening,
Camden.
and it's
Is it that end? No.
yeah.
Ish.
No, not as high. No, no, more. It's kind of between New Oxford Street, tending towards
Westminster way.
Holborn, that sort of area. No,
Not
not
that far?
sort of just north of Somerset
Okay, I'm
House.
getting confused. I don't know London that
Um,
much.
it's not a million miles away from Forbidden Planet, so
Oh,
it
yes.
makes quite a nice.
Oh, so near, not that far from G Dub.
No, not far from G Dub.
Cool.
No, Tottenham Court Road
Yeah.
is very
Yes.
close to
Yeah, I
Warhammer.
suppose
It's sort of
one stop.
in
Yeah.
that area.
Cool. Okay, good to know.
Opening in March, I found out today.
And
So
lot.
very soon.
Are they going to have tables? Do we know?
I'm still tempted to go and have a little recce
Yeah.
of the place and have a look at it down there. I've got no idea. I would assume, given that
It might not.
location, it surely it's going to be a small
Yeah.
premises, but
Which
no
is a
idea.
shame because you've got a lot of options around there for eating and things like that.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, and obviously transport
absolutely.
being reasonable. I will report back once I've
Indeed.
been able to go and give it a recce.
Wonderful.
But like you say, also they're coming to Newcastle, so they're expanding
They're
considerably.
coming to Newcastle, like that's near you.
Mm.
Um, like that's not almost somewhere foreign to us down here.
Yeah,
But yeah,
yeah,
no,
quite.
obviously you must be doing really well. And of course, we have our affiliate link with them as well. So if you want to go and order some heavy mechanicum machinery, or in the future some Ursarax or what have you, then
Mm.
you can head over there, or even want to make an Emperor's Children Army for 40k, or use those bits for
Mm.
30k. Lots of stuff, and you can support the show by doing that. Yeah, wonderful. Shall we?
We do also have an affiliate code for Battle
We do
Bling.
indeed.
Just I'm reminded of this as we, particularly as I was chatting with them, the guys from them who could attend at Beachhead. So that we've got that as well in the on the show notes, I'm sure, and that gives it helps support the show and gets, I think it's 5 or 10%, I forget, but it's a little discount for people who want it. And they have lots of shiny toys for your Titans and your Legions Imperialis, and even some of 30k bits and pieces now, which is always good to see.
Wonderful stuff. Awesome. So, how's your hobby been?
Consumed by that run up to Beachhead. It was quite nice to have a focus, an event that, as always, I wanted to do much. I wanted to do an awful lot more than I could actually bring myself to do. It turned out even the smallest things seemed to take an enormous amount of effort, and trying to actually have the energy, time, space, etc. to do it. But I got a few bits done. Got some new knights. I got those knight armigers painted up after that actually super helpful discussion that we had last show about sort of tailoring lists and options and which way do I go with that. And that gave me the incentive to paint up 6 tiny knight armigers for that, and a couple of lancers and a porphyron as well. So, and did those in the House of Veroni scheme, the lovely green metallic scheme that you tend to see around. It's the box art color scheme for them for Titanicus. So yeah, got those done. Made some new banners for the Warhounds that I took to Beachhead as well. And since then, I've been doing some non 30k things and built a few of those new Phoenix Lords because
All right.
I was a big fan of those in the 90s and couldn't resist what I thought were some pretty solid
Yeah.
updates. Was building Fuegan this morning, and I've got Baharov on the to do list. Oh, and I did a couple of the Blood Angels characters as well. The
Yeah.
updated ones of those in plastic, or it looked super cool. That's about it. In terms of that, I'm hoping to try and get a bit more. I want to try and kind of sort out the collections a bit more now. I've got them started to consolidate them all into one place, and I want to start getting them all drawn together. They're in sort of disparate boxes at the moment. I'm trying to get that all drawn together so I can host some games. How about you? What have you been up to?
Well, I put a call out on Twitter the other day to tell me to paint like in the evening, because we've rearranged a load of stuff at home. That took a while, and then I've been ill for most of last week, and literally it was like every evening it was like I want to get something done, don't really want to move.
Mm.
Um, so we did a lot of watching TV. I will say, am I being unreasonable on BBC iPlayer with
Well, that is funny because we've just been watching that as well. And what a
it's
weird coincidence. We haven't
we've
discussed this.
done both seasons. It's
Yeah.
Have you finished it?
We are 2 or 3 episodes away from
It
finishing
is
season 2.
dark and it is
It really is.
mad. Um, and there's not a single nice person in the whole show. Um,
That's
and
true.
I like literally not a nice person in the whole show. But some brilliant performances, and I really liked it. So we got into that. So we were like, okay, cool, we can sit and watch
Mm-hmm.
this and enjoy. I don't know if it's the right word. Enjoy that. So after a period of that, a desk that's a mess, loads of models to paint, not knowing where to begin like, right, this Blood Bowl team that have been sat here and I haven't painted anything on them for 2 months because I haven't done anything, basically. Darren from the Canadian podcast that's taking a bit of Age of Darkness podcast are taking a bit of hiatus at the moment. He messaged me to say, Greg, paint. And I was like, cool, yeah, think I was going to, but a little spur on meant I actually got my brush out and it was slow and it was rubbish. But then I went gaming the Tuesday night, and then the Wednesday I did a little bit more painting, and it was like almost as slow, slightly less rubbish. So I've got to just try and maintain an aspect of that, I think, because I had big plans. EW actually sent us through the Mechanicum heavy support box, and I had definite plans to get the Karachnos built and get some spray cans on it. And because of everything that happened, it's still in the box, which is a massive shame. But yeah. So I haven't done a lot, but I've done something, and I'm hoping just to build on that.
Ringing in my ears regularly is what Michael, Track of Words, Michael, said once. He just said, even if you just are able to grab even 10, 15 minutes, half an hour per day, he really tried to do this because he was finding a similar thing. And I found a blocker for me of doing things was I would be overthinking what I would do. I would almost think, right, I want to do this, 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 and this. I need to clear, to be able to do a meaningful thing, I need to have 2 hours clear, 3 hours clear to be able to get a real substantial thing done. And then it inevitably didn't happen because I'd either be too tired. I'd almost built it up to be too much of a chore, almost too much of an undertaking to do. I was like, I need the energy to do it. And I never did. And he was an advocate of sort of make yourself do, make it 10, 15 minute, even if you're just clipping a couple of bits off the sprue, so that when you come to do it later, they're ready to go. Rather than you think, I've got to fully clip, clean, prepare, glue, undercoat, paint. You're just doing little bits, and doing those little bits every now and again. Like this morning, I just finished off Fuegan in 15 minutes before I went to work.
Yeah,
that was really nice. I felt like I'd done something, but it's easier said than done. But it can make you feel quite good.
Part of my problem is, honestly, I'm like 2 or 3 times slower than most people at painting, as you've witnessed. So that half hour, I really don't feel like I've even started. But I think a bigger part of it, I was actually thinking about this. I thought I'd talk about it on the show. Since December, there's just been a lot going on. So work's been weird. Like one of the guy who's basically my level above my line manager, they've rearranged how they do things, and there's been a lot of change, and some of it is not great. And I've picked up Indeed and started to look at jobs around and things like that. Not sure that I'm going to move jobs, but I'm much more keeping an eye out than I was 3 or 4 months ago. My role within the company's changed. I'm doing slightly less of what I want to do, and that kind of got to me a little bit. And then, like being ill, and then there's just some other bits going on, and I think what my biggest problem at that point was also then missing the event that these these Blood Bowl models were for as well, and them sitting on my desk didn't help. But I was finding when I was getting home and then getting the boy to bed and whatever, and I was like, right, I just want to do something I enjoy, and I'm not a massively, I don't massively enjoy painting. What I do enjoy is playing some computer games or watching some TV or whatever. And I've put a lot of hours into Total War Warhammer 3 in the last 2-3 weeks, because it was easier, because it was slightly more enjoyable. Yeah, so I just think there was a period there where actually one of the major reasons I wasn't painting was because I really wanted to enjoy that time that I had, and maybe to switch off a little bit. And for me, it's much easier / rewarding in the moment to do that playing computer than it is to paint.
Mm. I think leaning into that is worth bearing in mind as well. Like you say, not trying to sort of fight that. If you're starting to feel like I should be doing this,
Yeah.
it's a hobby. You should be enjoying it. I think it's far better to just indulge in the other thing and just make that a guilt-free activity. There shouldn't be
No,
an element of guilt. Slightly different if you're preparing for an event. If you're preparing for something specifically, but I think doing what you did makes a lot of sense. Why would you make it into a
yeah,
chore?
but I think it took me a while to work out that was going on,
Mm,
which I think is the key. Like, to understand that, maybe I would have altered that a little bit. Um,
mm,
I am also sat here with a dwarf campaign on Total War Warhammer 3, where I'm now considering whether I'm going to try and control the whole map, which is a lot of time.
mm.
But I'm less kind of like, oh, must fire up that, must get on with that. So that's a good thing. But hoping that I can progress because I want to see. Problem is, I want to see things done. As my attitude of painting is like parenting. Um, I like having parented. I like having something painted. I don't necessarily like the act of painting or parenting um, all the time. Uh,
There's an honesty to that, which is
you
fair.
know, um, yeah, but it kind of is what it is. There are times in each where I'm like, yeah, this is good, and there are times when plates being thrown across the room and things like that. So it's all
Mm,
part of
mm,
fun, isn't it?
mm. Yeah, it's all part of the experience. It's a full range, isn't
But yeah,
it?
so at some point I am. The other thing I've decided to do is so when we watch TV, I've got the office set up means like Emma could come in here and watch TV, but for me to watch it with her, I'd have to be facing away from the desk. I could rearrange the desk, but then I'd be quite close to the TV. Also, it means there's more chance of stopping me doing what I'm doing. So I think what I
Mm,
need to
mm.
do is get a portable workstation that I can take into the front room, and most importantly, a portable light so I can build.
Yeah.
Not I won't paint, but I can build while we're watching something.
Nothing. I mean, a tray. I mean, I do that. Actually, I do that all the time. I've got one of those little paint
Yeah,
tray things, paint station things. But I mean, frankly, a tea tray does the job.
yeah,
Something with edges. You can just pop that down on the sofa beside you, and you can be cutting stuff off. You can be building models, no trouble at all.
yeah.
A, a, a lamp is a good call.
I need a good portable
Yeah,
battery powered lamp, and I know there are some on the market. I need to look into it and get.
you can get expensive ones.
I want a decent one.
You can get expensive ones. You can get, I think, some that are nearly as good for a hell of a lot
Yeah,
less. That are cool little aluminium rechargeable portable ones. So you can get stuff like that. Yeah, I think that's a good call. I think it's anything. I think it's worth putting a bit of thought into as well, because the more obstacles you remove like that, the more you enjoy the thing, rather than feeling like you're setting it up every time.
mm, yeah, for sure. Because I actually don't mind building. Again, I'm not particularly quick at it, um, but
It's one of my favourite parts,
I
frankly.
don't mind it. So I can sit and do that, and I'd much rather build stuff than paint stuff. So
Mm.
I think that's also part of it. Is when I get to the desk, it's not like the desk becomes the painting area to try and stop
Mm-hmm.
me going, oh yeah, well I might as well build this. Whereas I think actually, no, we're going to sit down for an hour and watch something. I can take that in there and do it then. But yeah, that and the great eBay purge, which has slowed down a little bit. Hey, it's all fun stuff.
So, sort of hobby progress.
There's been more progress than there has been in the last couple of shows, that's for sure.
Yeah,
So,
he's getting somewhere.
yeah,
You got some things going, so that's good. And on the horizon is Adepticon.
yeah, which I'm not doing a lot for. Yeah, I'm not sure I've got a date to come right this time, but again, there was like time restraints around what I was doing. A lot of the events that I would do, I might still try and get into an event or two. I've got to do it quick, I think. Um,
Mm.
might contact a couple of people, but very much going to go over there and try and just enjoy it. Need to plan how I'm getting to the airport actually, because I haven't done that yet. and he throws far enough away to be a bit of a pain in the rear, um, particularly at the times that leaving or need to be there and picking up. So, but hey, that's all part of the fun.
Yeah.
It's all good. Yeah, looking forward to Adepticon. So
Cool.
wonderful. Right, shall we take a break there and come back and talk about what's
Yeah.
been going on? Okie dokie. What's been going on in the world of Games Workshop? Let's have a little look back. I was trying to remember where we got to, but I think basically the first thing was the announcement of the Mechanicum Heavy Support Force, which has very quickly gone on sale.
Yes.
It's a cool box.
I think it's cool that they made it into a box.
Yeah, I don't know
I
what the
wouldn't have
savings
expected
are.
them to do. It's quite good, but I'm just there's something quite nice, isn't there, about these sort of
Yeah.
battle force type boxes that they put together? And I think it is. I think when you factor in third parties such as our friends at Element,
Oh, for sure.
you virtually get the Thanatar for free. It's
Oh,
something in that
wow.
order of
That's cool.
it's in that order of magnitude. There is a saving on top of just
Yeah, there
buying them.
usually
Obviously,
is. Yeah.
yeah, it's not just bundling them together. There is a saving, and on those items, which segue really nicely with the previous Mechanicum box. Yeah, it's a super cool box that they did that.
I
Neat.
think, you know, it's a good idea from them as well in terms of helping you get your army up and running. Like it's not just that, oh cool, they're giving us this discount. Like they're helping you build an army, which is good for them because it means you'll push on to build the 3,000 points and stuff like that. But I actually had someone else on the program message me today. I was like, "Did you get this box from GW?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I've finally started to put the Krios together. It's awesome." It's like,
Mm,
"Yep, it's really cool." And you got the variations in there as well.
yeah.
But yeah, I had these in resin. Um, going to be so much more. I don't know, fun because it'll be fiddly, but easier, better to
Mm-hmm.
worrying about warped like the shield plates on the
Track
Krios.
units. Ooh.
Um, yeah, more those shield plates like they were bent and
Mm.
they're in a curved thing anyway. But yeah, how I'm going to
I feel
paint them.
like resin mold lines as well on
Yeah.
those things where you've got lots of repetitive detail. But that was always the things mold slip on things
Oh,
like Volkites or those autocannons with those great sort of recoil suppressors they had on them. If
yeah.
you had a mold slip through there, that was deadly. And I think the
Or
Mechanica, with the level of detail, the type of detail they have, those sort of like the Krios's main gun, the lightning cannon thing. If you had any kind of mold line or slip through those discs, oh, nightmare, which you just don't get with the plastic.
no, the front of the Triaris are those
Mm,
ribbed
mm,
um, kind of what do you call them? Tubes.
mm,
Yeah, no, it's a brilliant piece of kit. I've seen a lot of people talking about picking them up. This will help more Mechanicum get on the table, more variety in Mechanicum. Although
mm.
obviously rules play a major part in that. But yeah, super cool. And then they also, staying on Mechanicum, they also revealed the Ursarax.
Yes,
You
yes, they did.
knew they're coming, but they just the fact that these are in plastic compared to the resin, you just didn't want the resin ones dropping. Um,
There's something quite nice about the fact they've done them. I would have bet money, and like as I said with the Thalax, I'd have expected them to have done those in packs of three. The fact that the box is six of them, you get like a good chunk of them in one go. Obviously, these were virtually guaranteed once they'd done the Thalax as the
yeah,
base that these were going to exist as well.
like
Cool, lovely to see them.
they did it with the basic troops as well, didn't they? Like the
Yeah,
boxes went up to 40 because they know the numbers you need, and it does help a little bit of savings on there.
yeah.
The do them in bulk, so it makes sense. Like, yeah, you're not buying in resin. It's understandable why you'd put three Thalax in a pack.
Mm-hmm.
Cost being a major part of that, but in plastic. cool. Yeah, you're going to want 6 Thalax
Mhm.
because, minimum, to have multiple squads even. But yeah, they're just fantastic. They're really cool.
Yeah,
I'm sort of
pleased
looking
that they
forward.
exist.
Yeah, looking forward to having a Mechanicum army again at some point. That'd be good. Really good.
Did you
Uh,
get? Did you not keep your? Did you move yours on?
sold it all on.
No,
Didn't
you did.
I got fed up of painting.
Yeah, fair enough.
Frankly, the theme I had, I got to the point where I was looking at the next model, thinking I don't want to paint it. I
Mm,
thought, well, I'm only ever going to play one army, then one or two variations on an army.
mm.
So let's move that on. So hey ho, it's all good. Got it in plastic now. It's much easier to transport.
And build
But
and everything. Yeah.
yeah, right. Let's leave the big guy for a second. Today we had the Blood Crow.
Yes, that
Katie's next.
was.
Katie's next.
Yeah, I thought that was super cool. Frankly, I thought they did a good job with that one. I think the general reaction I've seen has been generally positive. Few people saying he's a bit busy.
I saw one of the discords I was on. Someone's gone, oh my god, that's like the worst interpretation of a character I've seen. And then underneath it, what was it? I can't tell what it is. No, sorry, I can't tell what it is. But my first thought is that his silhouette is wrong. Maybe it's the angle. Next person, my god, he's perfect. I've seen a few people talking about the head, saying the head's pretty uh, quote unquote bad compared to the drawing. But I'm like, whatever. That's never really bothered me.
I've already seen a couple. Well, I saw one in particular. Someone just had a similar comment, like, "Oh, I much prefer the drawing, and this doesn't reflect that to me." And then I saw someone almost immediately after do a Photoshop tweak where they just painted the eyes in completely black, made
Right,
the skin tone slightly paler, and put stubble on.
right, and it fit.
It looked so good, and it fits the image much more closely than this particular paint job does. I don't hate in any way. I don't dislike. I think the paint job was excellent. But it was interesting just seeing that slight variation made it even more sinister, which given the
Mm,
character there. I thought the blue tint to the black, because typically this isn't the paint job, obviously, that they've done with this. Typically, the color plates show Raven Guard as having almost a matte black
mm,
as a variation on when you compare with the Iron Hands, who've got that sort of oily, almost metallic black version of it, and a slightly shinier black, glossier black. Raven
yeah,
Guard, stealth, in the shadows, matte black, tactical black. That sort of look to it. This particular paint job, lots of blue in the highlights, very, very blue highlights, which with the quite a lot of detail going on as well. It's a choice. It's. I think we'll see some really interesting paint jobs in there. I just think the
yeah,
level of leaning into that sort of detailing that we saw on the Raven Guard Contemptor, for example, with that sort of tribal, almost tribal banding on it, and sort of almost those nods to the aesthetic they've chosen for the Kakarodons. And the super cool pistols, yeah, I'd love to see it in some more angles. It looks
yes.
big as well.
Mm. Well, I suppose what's interesting is there looks like a lot of stuff on it, but I wonder if that's in kind of answer to the fact that we've had those generic
Mm,
models where we talked about before, where they
yeah,
can't put too much on there. Um,
I think this is fine. I actually don't think. I think it's just about right. Yeah, okay. There's quite a lot going on, but I think it's a good. It's good to have that lot going on for a character such as this. This is not something you would undertake yourself. That's for sure.
no,
There's a lot
no,
of unique stuff to this. Capes are a nightmare. Or these are sort of. It's like a camo cloaky. Well, not a camo cloak, is it? It's a
yeah.
shroud of cloaky type thing with clasps and stuff on it.
Mm,
That would be awful to try and do yourself.
yeah. Someone pointed out like he's got a lot of bling from Moritat. But it's like why can't Moritats have bling? Like
Yeah, entirely.
just because he's in that role doesn't mean he can't be storied
Mm,
with it. So yeah, yeah, it's an interesting one. I think yeah, I'd like to see it in hand.
definitely.
Um, but it's cool. He's cool. It's good to get
It
like the
does.
lesser recognized legions getting a bit more.
Agreed. It does suggest. given that the rules for him are found in the Martian Civil War book.
Mm,
Maybe he is the start of seeing the four special characters, named characters, that were in that book. Who knows?
yeah,
That would be
absolutely.
cool. But we might start to see those other characters which obviously I'd be keen to see a few of those. But cool to kick off with if they are doing that, cool to kick off with the Raven Guard one.
For sure. Just seeing if there's any clues in the writing. Doesn't seem to be. No, that's cool. Guru V. You can get Omegon / Alfarius. We've done this one, Joy Toy.
I feel we've talked about him because
We
I
have,
commented
haven't
on the level of green.
we? Yes,
The
we
one
have.
I'm not sure about is have we talked about the big man?
The big man. I'm trying to remember where we are now.
Have we already spoken about Angron?
Oh, no, I was waiting for that. Oh, yeah, I thought you meant Joy Toy. No worries. No, we definitely haven't.
We've definitely spoken about Joy Toy Alfarius.
Yeah, we
because
have.
we had a whole discussion
Ignore
about
that.
the level of green.
So, okay. Do you think his legs look too small? I think
No, I
this is a
don't.
strange comment. I've had a couple of people say
Didn't
that.
even. I've not heard it. I've not seen
He's
that
got
anywhere, and I don't agree. I've
like
just loaded up
his
the image. And,
thigh is thick. Like when you look at where his actual waist is, like his thigh is like it's not slim, is it? Like it's muscle all
I
across there.
strongly disagree. I mean, I'd understand that comment more if it was a conversation about the fact that the leg armor, by comparison to the shoulders and torso, are more plain.
Yeah.
They are not. They are not plain by any
No.
stretch, but they
They
are
are less.
more plain. Yes, they are
Yeah.
less ornamented than the rest of the model, and as a result, there's a sort of textural contrast there between the rest of the model. Particularly when you look at how spiky the weapons are and his upper body is. But that's the only thing I can think to say, and I think that's a huge amount to do with 2D photography doing what it does.
Yeah. Yeah. I just found that
I don't agree with that at all.
a little bit a strange one. I thought maybe I'm the only person who thinks it looks pretty well proportioned. He's in a pose that maybe, you know, plays a few tricks on your eyes in that respect. I must admit, looking at it a few times took me a while to really look at the head properly. I think it was actually in the video when I finally
Funnily
kind of.
enough, it was only while I was lining up the website to have this discussion, I hadn't seen the slightly zoomed in and enlarged photo that they've put on when you click on the kind of Horus Heresy tag. The image that's currently on there is a zoomed in version of his face, and the paint job is extraordinary. I think on the face that's highlighted the insane level of detail in that
Yeah.
head, neck, the nails, etc. And the paint job to be able to do that, the way they've picked out the sharpness of all that texture is unreal. I hadn't
But
appreciated that with
yeah,
the
I
other
mean,
photos.
it was I paused the video about 12 seconds in, and you see the head directly on, right in the center of the piece, and yeah, it's pretty awesome. So, what are your thoughts on Angron?
I was really surprised. You sort of, no, I don't know why I would expect this because it didn't happen with Fulgrim. Hasn't happened. I almost expect there to be some sort of build up, some rumblings, some rumors, some other words, and it almost felt like a bolt out of nowhere, and sort of
It
that
was,
makes it more
and
exciting.
it was on a Friday.
Yeah, exactly. On Valentine's Day, no less, which I enjoyed that they lent into that
Yeah,
a
it's
bit.
why we didn't get a Thursday is like,
Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
We'll move it to Friday because it's Valentine's Day. I thought that amused me, in the particular way they presented that. Fantastic model. Follows the theme of Fulgrim's resin model, heresy specific model being fantastic. This is the same. The level of craft that's gone into that model, to me, it's a fabulous piece, and it's tempting to say I can't wait to see what other um,
yeah, for sure.
amazing painters are going to do with it. That said, I think they've done a pretty stonking job with this one as well. It's visually busy. There's a lot of spikiness going on
Yeah,
in those weapons. That's fine. He's a demon.
I
Yeah.
yeah. So my first thought of this was like, whoa, there's a lot going on
Mm,
here. Um, I really like it.
mm,
I think it's awesome. I was a little bit surprised. I thought more people were. So obviously, it's going to get compared to the plastic Angram. I thought more people. So with Fulgrim, when the plastic Fulgrim came out on 40k sites, there were a lot of people who were like, oh, "I like this more than the Heresy one," and I was expecting. Was a little bit surprised with that. Like, I understand that you would buy this instead of buying the resin one, but
mm,
like for me, they don't compete, and that's no slight on the plastic model. On this one, I thought you get more people saying, "Yeah, I'll use the plastic Angron rather than this," because I think it's definitely this is more like a second ed drawing, a third ed Blanchitsu drawing
mm,
um, put into a model than some of the other Primarchs.
mm,
And I think there's an element of that which makes me lean towards I think I might have the plastic one
mm.
over this one stylistically.
I do particularly like the plastic Angron. I thought that was because it was very faithful to what I thought was a very strong. I'm avoiding the word iconic, but because that
Mm.
suggests it elevates it above all others. But it was one that resonated with me particularly. That's the one that tends to
Bestial,
be,
yeah.
yeah, that real one where he's looking into to the viewer, into the camera, and really screaming. It's the image that typically is associated with the first invasion of Armageddon. That was an image of Demon Angron, and I thought they captured that. They did a good job. It's chunky, whereas I find these resin ones have a slight are finer, for want of a better word.
Yeah.
It doesn't have that chunkiness that plastic lasers have. However, that is more of a stark comparison, I think, in the Fulgrim, where you've got
Oh
this
yeah.
incredibly delicate, elegant model contrasted with one that's had to have a certain amount of compromise in the plastic one. That is less present, I would say, with Angron. Although that said, they've really been lent into what they could do in the resin one with having that many sort of chaos spikiness things going on. That's probably the only thing I would hesitate with. I think that the body, the head in particular, I've already said it, is incredible on this model. The characterization and stuff like that is fantastic. I find the weapons a little extreme in the spikiness department. But I get you. Yeah, I can see why people would choose. I think it's a much harder choice between this and the plastic one, but because they're both so good. I don't think that's as hard a choice for me with Fulgrim.
Yeah. No, I'm with you on that one. This is all Sam Egan, the whole thing
Mm.
as well. Just another one that he smashed out. He's a machine.
It must have taken so long.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's a year and a couple of months since Fulgrim was revealed. Boxing Day, wasn't it? It's Boxing Day.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah. Um, if he's going to do all of them, that's quite a legacy of work, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Do we think we're going to pound out all four then?
I would imagine so. Yes, I would imagine they will.
It'll be
I think there's a certain such an opportunity there. I would have thought they'd be mad not to.
well. I think so. I mean, they could be doing a Shadow Crusade book next, potentially.
Mm-hmm.
That's why we got Angron coming, so we can have some rules for Demon Angron.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Which would suggest a Lorgar, which would be cool.
Potentially, yeah.
Not a demon
Uh,
one, obviously, but
I wonder what they'll do with Mortarion
mm,
and Magnus. I mean, Magnus, you got a bit more freedom,
mm.
but yeah, it'll be an interesting one.
Not sure where you'd set a book. Well, I suppose you didn't need to with Fulgrim either, did you? It didn't need to be set around a specific event.
No,
Because I could have imagined them holding Fulgrim and Mortarion for a siege related. series of books.
Uh,
But um, Magnus is harder. Well, that said, you'd wait for a Prospero book, assuming they do that and revisit things. But they don't need to. Fulgrim was just an exemplary battles, but just an
yeah,
exemplary battles book. So
that's
actually, you
fine.
could do it at any time. I think they'll do. I really do, based on this.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing what Sam, I presume Sam's going to do them all, does with that.
I didn't realise there was so much Blood Angel specific paraphernalia on his base. I
Yeah.
knew
Oh yeah.
there was a fallen kind of
It's got a Crimson Paladin
senior. Well, he's a power armored guy, I think. Yeah, pretty sure it's a power armored guy there. But
shield. Is
there's
that
a
not a? Is
paladin.
that
Yeah,
just?
there's a paladin, crimson paladin shield,
Yeah.
and a banner. I hadn't realised that was there, but it's
Yeah.
a champion of some sort who's fallen there. But yeah, there's
He
quite a few
kills
bit
lots
more
of
there.
them.
Yeah, he certainly does. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Can only assume he'll be the same price as Fulgrim. Those wings are pretty big.
Yes, and he's a chunky model by the looks of it.
Yeah.
And he came with a friend.
Well, this is it, right? That was the warm up, and then the real reveal was the Tarasaran. What a
Yeah.
model! He's super cool. Although again, I just like 28 mil figures. Like I don't really get. A lot of people are hating on this face, and I'm like, I think it's cool. Like it's 28 mil model. Like, can you make faces that are sometimes amazing and like yeah, sure, but I think it's fine. If there's a drawing of her somewhere, it doesn't mean that's the only like that's
Yeah,
the one
absolutely.
way she looked.
I
You
have
know,
seen I've seen fan art that was probably closer to what I had in my head
sure,
that she looked like. It tended to make her more feminine.
yeah, of course,
This model has come across as and fan art can have a pretty bad way
yeah,
of going far too far that way, um, for all the wrong reasons. Typically, the you tended to that aside. I saw fan art that was again probably closer to what I had in my mind. The model I feel has been a choice to make her look harder, which I think entirely is in keeping with the character. And I think the
mm.
paint job does some of that as well. There's a hardness to the look, particularly, and I'm mainly focusing on the face here. I think if there was going to be a criticism of the legs looking a bit thin, I certainly wouldn't apply that to Angron. I could understand it on this model based on the photo, but I think that's utterly the photo that's doing
I
that.
also don't think I'd mind for a spacefaring captain
Agreed.
who probably very rarely
Absolutely agree.
uses to have thin legs.
Yeah,
Like
thin
that's
limbs in
probably
general to be
yeah.
to be a slender character. I agree completely. Yeah.
Um, yeah, no, I like her. I think she's cool. The other thing with fan art is the more subtle issue with it is how it takes on legitimacy. So
Completely agree. Yeah.
you'll get Rogel Dawn, and when everyone's like, "Oh yeah, Rogel Dawn with his tash," it's like, yeah, Rogel Dawn can have a tash, but the image you're referring to is a piece of fan art. Um, yeah, anytime you come up with something that's super cool, you've got to remember, or a story, even a story, or what have you. If it's outside what GW put out, and even then, GW contradicts itself because that's the nature of the way they tell their story.
Mm,
That anything not produced by GW is fan content, and therefore you can't expect that to be reproduced. In fact, you should probably not expect it to be reproduced because then GW open themselves up to litigation.
mm, mm.
So, in a way that they don't need. So, I think it's brilliant. I wonder what her rules will be. Um,
I think it's brilliant that we even have her as a character, as a model.
I
I'm super popular, so makes perfect sense. But
it does.
I'm surprised they've done a model in many
It's
ways.
it's interesting because GW don't like putting out models that aren't fighters, aren't used
Mm,
in game. ancillary models tend to be very extremely rare now. But this is a brilliant way of getting another female figure and a much beloved one into the game, which is super cool. I wonder what else we can get. I wonder what other characters we might see pop in that are not necessarily directly involved in the combat that we see on the tabletop. So,
there's a whole bunch that you start moving in the circles of, Malcador's crowd,
yeah,
Andromeda's
those.
17, is it? The sort of characters like that you could imagine they're having a sort of role
Hmm.
in some way that's adjacent to combat but isn't frontline fighter. I think there's loads of scope for cool characters. I mean, I'm re-listening to the Siege at the moment, so there's a few of them there.
Right.
Bacillo Foe would be quite a
Yeah,
fun one.
but Bacillo Foe was one, but you could see them on the tabletop. What I would love for them to do, I don't think it's within their wheelhouse at the moment or what they want to do at the moment. But could you imagine having your objectives as Mercedes Olaton?
I was just thinking that.
You
Yeah,
know,
remembrances.
a
Yeah,
Hauser,
Ignis Casey. Yeah,
like Ignis Casey as being objectives,
Kirill
or
Sinderman. Oh yes,
yeah,
please.
as we move on to having like more narrative stories. Like imagine doing um, a story where a narrative where they're on the table, you've got to escort them off, things like that, and utilizing more of the Black Library, um, you know,
A Zone
info you've
Mortalis
got there.
game where you're running close protection on a
Yeah.
series of characters
Oh,
like
mate,
that. That'd
how
be
brilliant would that
so
be?
good. Yes, please.
Yeah. So I think there's scope there. GWSA having non-combatant models is not
Well,
common.
unless you
Not
look to
common.
Necromunda. You look to Necromunda,
True.
every other week they were producing not
They're all.
adjacent Necromunda, utterly set up for that. But
Yeah, the game is set up for that.
Heresy, I feel it could be done.
Well, I mean, the problem is you won't get it on a Black Library celebration unless it's plastic, which I don't think they'd be well known enough outside of
No way. These have
like
got to
so.
be resin.
You wouldn't do
Yeah,
that. It would have to be a big.
there's no
Would
way
have
the
to be a
volume
main
makes sense.
character. Yeah, but a celebration resin pack of 4 or 5 remembrances
Yes.
would be amazing, or 2 and 3, like do them per location or what have you. Cinderman, yeah, would be brilliant. I mean, Cinderman goes on to become quite an important person.
Well,
Imagine,
indeed. Yeah.
imagine 2 versions of Cinderman where you've got, Remembrance of Cinderman and then, Inquisitor Cinderman
Mm.
in a double pack would be amazing. And
Yeah.
that's the kind of thing that GW would have done in the 90s because someone would have gone, oh, I've just had this idea, so I'll make them. And they were much smaller company, much more able to bend and shift with plans and things like that. But it would be brilliant if GW put out a pack like that because, objectives, what have you got? Oh, I've got a marker I'll put down, or I've got some crates. Cool. Okay, cool. Or let's fight, let's fight over Mercedes Ollerton, who's got, information in her head or something like that. Would be pretty awesome. So that's my challenge to you, GW. Write some scenarios, put these characters in, and put out some models, and I think you'll find they'll sell.
I
Like,
think they do rather well, given your
because
proven
it's
capability. Yeah. Once you need a bit of a break from Necromunda, get
yeah.
the team on doing a couple of those support characters, and I think
So
they
is
do
she
quite well
coming just with Angron? Or is she coming separately?
separately.
She is separately. I couldn't
It's
remember.
not it's not a 2-pack as I see
No,
it.
that's good because she will sell to a lot of people.
Mm.
I think. I really hope, because to get those other things, you need models like this to sell enough. But I can see, Darcy Bono's going to get one straight away. I'm absolutely sure of that because she's her. Um, but I can see fans of the books. I could see someone like Michael buying this model just to own it and paint it up.
Yeah.
Those kind of people. So yeah, so hopefully it sells enough that GW have a little thought about it.
I think let's do something else. One personal and I think really petty bugbear I had with that model, the handprint. The handprint is
It's a bit schoolboy, isn't it?
The handprint is Angron's, is it not?
Well, no,
Is it
can't.
not? It's Khan's. Okay,
I saw
okay. I've
someone
got a
talking about
bit more of an issue with it. Yeah,
that.
I mean, particularly when you see, which I think is the model, the modeling process, even with resin, when you're casting fingers in a hand position like that, as hers is, which I think is cool. It means that
Yeah,
the hand has to be a certain size to make it castable. To then
yeah.
have the handprint be smaller than that, looking like it's a child's handprint, I thought was.
Let me just double check.
I thought it
Um,
was Angron's handprint,
so
but I
did I,
think
but
you're
I
right. I think
thought
it's
someone
Khan's. Hmm.
thought someone said it was
But that actually
Khan's.
makes more sense. At least
Uh,
that's better than, because if it was Angron's, it would it would almost be the size of her coat in general.
I think it's pretty much sure it's Khan.
Hmm. Hmm. Even so, that's
Yeah, it's from
splitting
Khan.
hairs. It's a paint job.
Yeah, yeah, but it's one of those silly things, isn't it? Like, yes, it's a paint job, but if if it was Angron's and it was like that,
Yeah,
I mean, Angron's hand should be like the size of a,
yeah.
but it just feels off, like, you know.
Did you
Um,
think it when you saw it?
yes, but I'd already almost immediately read about it as well.
Right.
Yeah, but it's Khan. Yeah, which again is still a massive handprint.
Yeah,
It should be yeah. So
yeah. I thought it
uh,
was a great reveal. That I'm amazed they didn't hold back for a bigger event. That for it
I
to just
think
bring it out on a
maybe
particular thing was cool. I made it even more unexpected.
I'm trying to find the thing about it. I'm sure it is. Let's go
The,
Lexicon. Does
the
that do
thing
it?
about it, are you still trying to confirm whose
It's,
handprint it is? Man looks something on internet.
yeah. You know,
It's good telly, isn't it? As Greg Davies
yeah,
once said.
indeed. Unfortunately, when you look up the Sarasar in handprint, you get a lot of comments that no idea. Calm before leaving his bloody handprint on the Tara.
Okay.
So yeah, can't find the exact text or anything, but yeah, Khan's and Khan printed a red hand on her chest in honour of her exemplary service. That's from Warhammer: The Horus Heresy Legions. But yeah, we can confirm that. But I think again, that's just one of those misconceptions that's
Mm.
just bled in, and it's like it hasn't necessarily come from anywhere. It's just misremembered and then repeated, and then oh yeah, cool. It is that. So yeah, all good.
Hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah.
make sure your handprint's big enough. Get your car model. Stretch your fingers out. Indeed. Wonderful.
I mean, we
Um,
joke. I bet some people will do that.
oh well, yeah. There's always those tryhards on there. The only other thing was um, the official announcement that Eschen's Spiel will have the European Golden Demon again.
Yes, as the
So we are
European, as you say, the European leg. Therefore, no UK Golden Demon.
no UK Games Workshop event
Hmm.
um, outside of their anniversary day at Warhammer World and probably Warhammer Day.
Mm.
And yeah, so again, moving into another year with no big GW event in the UK, which is a massively disappointing thing, I think.
Agreed.
I just really want them. And don't get me wrong, if you're not going to use an outsourced venue, you can't hold Golden Demon at Warhammer World. It's not big enough.
No.
And you can't hold any other event at Warhammer World. It's not big enough. You can do you can do what they do with their ticketed open days that are free, but you can't do um, what they can in these other places to make it worthwhile. I
Yeah.
think we just need like I was talking about this because someone said, "Oh, why would I go to Adepticon? It's just tournaments, blah 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 blah, for a preview." It's like, well, It's not just tournaments. There's other stuff going on. But Blood and Glory had a Warhammer preview at it. We just want a decent English multi-event that London GT is not the right venue for it, and everyone just disappears anyway, as far as I can tell. The venue's a sports hall, glorified sports hall. It's an indoor event track and field event centre. But Blood and Glory wasn't massive, but we were still able to have that because of what it was. So yeah.
Frankly, Beachhead was of that scale. It's not. It's Beachhead is. Well, it was bigger. It felt bigger. It was bigger than when you were there the year before. It expanded.
It has expanded.
It's not. It's got. It's obviously a vast range of war game related, board game related, and role playing things in there as well. So, but if you did that scale of event, but it was all GW, it would be like a games day of about 15 years ago, I would guess, maybe 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's in that sort of. It's an early 2000s scale
Adepticon's not
event.
Just GW, so
no,
it could be something like that. It's I suppose the problem is, do you have that venue outside of the hours that do you play the games? Like, can they be in there in the evening and make it more of that? Like, the beauty of Blood and Glory was we could stay in the roundhouse till 11 o'clock. Which allowed you to utilise the facilities and everything else. But I mean, don't get me wrong, Beachhead is doing good things.
Oh yeah, it's not on the same scale though, but it's just in terms of it. I can't think of many events that mix tournaments, big, reasonably large scale tournaments of multiple game systems, as well as a quite wide ranging retail and participation game and other events now as well, like various painting courses, competitions, board game cafes, demos, that sort of scale of thing. Salute does the latter of those, doesn't do any tournaments. Isn't compared. LGT, I think, is all tournaments. It goes the other way. The mixed events are relatively rare. It sounds like Blood and Glory did that. Or was that only tournament?
Sorry, the LGT?
No, Blood and Glory.
Blood and Glory was, well, no, you had Narrative 40k, you had Heresy, you had Titanicus at the end.
It's all gaming though. There wasn't.
It was at that point all gaming. We wanted to go further, but it came to an end. But yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong, Beachhead's doing it. Beachhead's becoming really cool. I say if I wasn't
totally the wrong location to be a national thing.
That's part of the problem, right? And
it's a long way in one of the corners. Yeah, it's on one of the. It's on the border. It's not. It wouldn't work for that at all. But in terms of what it's doing.
We're going down to Cornwall this year for our holiday, and our halfway stop is going to be not far from Beachhead. So it's not quite in the corner, but it's far enough out away.
It's a corner, but no, you're right. It's our border is a bit of a thing. It's on the edge, let's say.
Who knows? Hopefully we can get GW however they do it, whether it's having a venue to do it, their own venue to do it themselves, or finding the right venue. But it just feels a bit wrong that in America you can go to 3 events where there are GW previews where they have that presence, and in Europe you have Essen, fine, cool, but you can't have anything in the UK where you're based. Feels disappointing. What's crazy is I won't go into that actually, but who knows? We'll see what happens. Fingers crossed.
Right. Hopefully we'll see something eventually, but who knows?
Indeed. Okay, cool. Let's take a break. Right, we're going to follow up on last episode's little piece about your actual journey to Beachhead and your event, your games there after doing your army list. I want to shout out Andrew Gray. Thank you he was like, I really like the bit about making the army. He plays the same Legio as you and had come to almost the same list with the similar kind
No
of
way.
thinking that we had done. He did like the fist on his warlord.
Interesting. Okay.
Reasons. In fact, let me try and bring that up. Andrew, people might not know the name, but you might recognize some Alpha Legion wearing some Imperial Fist colours.
Oh yeah.
That's Andrew. So he's hopefully got another one going for.
Hugely inspirational, influential color scheme. There. Wow. Cool.
Yeah. So oh, that's right. Your conversation with How Was This was very interesting. Basically, work your way to the loadouts I run. The Bellicosa Mori Apocalypse Warlord is my support time. Brawler goes up in the middle with the Hounds. Lancers basically act as sweepers for the Shooty Warlord. It does run the fist instead of the Gatling because it terrifies people, so they ignore the Hounds. There we go, which frees you up to strip shields. Essentially.
Interesting.
There we go.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Funnily enough, I saw some people talking, having a conversation about, this is post Beachhead, very much post Beachhead. People were talking, some of the people who were there, talking about some homebrew maniples. And one of the traits that someone suggested, our mutual friend Ed, no less, said, I think had a suggestion of a +2 movement for it was going to be a Warlord and Warbringer heavy maniple. And the idea being that if you put the Warbringers on first fire order, the Warlords would get some encouragement. They'd basically get sort of free or very incentivized rules to try and encourage them to run up the board. I.e., you've got these siege weapons firing at the back in the Warbringers, and then the Warlords are being sent as a runner forward. Was the idea behind the maniple. Part of that was they said, why don't we consider giving the Warlords +2 movement, because then, because the real problem of Ariox and Power Claws is you just can't get the Warlords moving quickly enough. And you think people were quite quick to say, oh yeah, super cool. What is that? I'm thinking, well, that's a Storm. Admittedly, a Storm have the considerable downside of the double reactor dice roll to do that, but that is just the +2 to boosted movement.
+2 to
and
movement.
It does make a big difference.
+2 to movement on Warlords probably does need that, because it's
it
not
needs
just
a big downside. I agree. It's insanely
it's not just
powerful.
fist,
You can't do it. No, I agree. You can't do it you can't have it without a downside. I agree with that completely.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. It's all good.
Fascinating. Yeah, but fascinating that that's enough to make people think, yeah, the Power Claws are a way to go. I personally missed the additional firepower in my test games, so went with the Gatling. But I get it. I do, and it'll come up in my discussion of some of these games as well. So, what would you like to know? Where would you like me to dive in? Do you want me to go straight into the games?
You settled on the list we talked about. Just briefly go over it.
I will touch on it. I settled on the Armiger version of the list. I tweaked it around so that I had the support Warlord. So it was the Regia Maniple. It was the two Warlords, or the one Warlord with just the classic Brawler with the Gatlings on the roof, Macro Gatling on one arm, Sun Fury on the other, typically with overcharged cannon. 2 tournament pattern Warhounds with Plasma Vulcans, and 1 double Swarmer Warhound. And the second Warlord is the support Warlord with Apocalypse, Mori Quake, and Bellicosa. They are all supported by 2 Lancers and 3 Armigers. Bastion shielding all round. Just managed to fit it into the 1950. That was the list. And the Armigers were the debate of whether it was the Armigers or alternatively an additional Lancer. And I went with the Armigers because they're super cool little models and added something that was unexpected. That was the list. The first game I had, I was educated immediately because I had been playing the outflank rule wrong, and I thought you could go anywhere on the side board edge that you choose. Either the side board edges and neutral board edges, as they are. Not the case. You cannot deploy them in the deployment zones. They have to be in the neutral part of it, which makes perfect sense. Reading it, and it was universally there, but it just wasn't what I expected. Made much more sense because that, as you remember, when I was talking about it before, I was hesitating on the armatures because they had a bit of a feel bad for me. You could only just about counter it when you essentially could put them right behind people's Titans if they had support Titans in their deployment zone. As soon as you can't put them in the deployment zone, that's a different matter because you've got pretty good ability to get angles on them and get a shot into them before they can move and start bringing their weapons into range. So that massively lessened the feel-bad feel. I still think they're useful. There's still something people had to consider, but they weren't as, this could really piss people off, just having this thing that they just suddenly appear and that they couldn't really do anything about. It balanced that out hugely. Would you like me to go into the games?
Yeah, let's have a little look at the games. Not
I won't go into
details.
excessive detail as I can have a tendency to do. 5 games over the weekend, 3 games on the Saturday. It's the same format as we've had before. 3 games on the Saturday, 2 games on the Sunday. All the same points level. Beachhead previously has played with having smaller points battle games on the Saturday, larger point games on the Sunday. This was all 1950 games, classic Swiss system, randomized pairings in the first round. I was against a gentleman who I played last time, had a great game against last time, and a very, very formidable player, Simon Simpkins. Badger, as some people know him on various Discords and things. So knew him well. He was playing a pretty potent list, which he was hands up. He was going in to play this well, play it hard. He was playing a. Was it a Regia or was it a something in Ferox? Doesn't matter too much. It was a Crusade Legio, which he painted up as a fantastic reference to Legio Victorum. I mistakenly thought it was a different Legio that they haven't covered yet, and a blue Legio, but this is Legio Victorium, based on a single color scheme from the old Titan Legions epic game, Codex Titanicus. They had a blue scheme in there, and he did the whole mana plot like that, and they looked amazing. He'd really put the effort in. Looked superb. 2 Warlords and the 3 Warhounds supporting them. So it was actually pretty much a mirror of what I had, but he'd managed to, with the Crusade Legio war gear being what it is, he'd managed to squeeze in a very effective list, to say the least. They were very effective. And there was all sorts of shenanigans with the different traits he could give them. So he had 2 Warlords, a Reaver, and 3 Warhounds. He managed to get into that list. And because the tracking gyros for Crusade Legios are only 10 points, so his 2 Warlords were packing long-range weaponry. So you have one with a conversion beamer, one with a quake cannon, and the other with the grav cannon and bellicosa, both with apocalypse. Warhound's the same as mine, 2 tournaments, 1 Swarmer and a Reaver with melter cannon. The real thing is he had the traits on them with I think it was marked for greatness or something like something to that effect. Basically, he was able to utilize quite a few sort of he could nominate targets and nominate Titans of his own to get +1s to hit, re-rolls, this sort of thing. The Crusade Legio kind of allows that, and the combination of those things meant it was very effective at knocking things down. That said, the Regia continued to prove its worth in its ability to make these things real castles. Our 2 sort of warlord fortresses, I suppose, kept plugging away at each other, and it made it virtually impossible to kill. But yeah, real
education in the game. I'm pleased to say I actually managed to do some damage last time I played him. I think he tabled me or got very close to tabling me. I'm pretty sure he tabled me, and I didn't destroy anything of his. It was by far my worst performance last time. This time I actually killed some things of his, and he didn't wipe me off the board, so I was quite pleased with that. It's an improvement. And he said to me at the end that I think I and one other jointly did as much damage as anyone against that legion against his force across the weekend. So yeah, quite an opener. To the weekend, going up against someone. He went on to place second in the whole event, so he did very, very well, and it's an absolute pleasure to play with a real gent, while also being a formidable opponent. Game 2, who took Legio Interfector, which is I've got.
Who was that? We missed the name.
Oh, name was Nate Deards. Again, real fun game. Nate was played in a really kind of relaxed, chilled out way, but was really good at explaining what rules they were playing, what the different things did. Because Interfector is, I would say, a Legio you don't tend to. I certainly haven't seen as much as others, even though they've got a very cool but potentially quite a daunting paint scheme, and this kind of leaning into the kind of madness of chaos. That's kind of their thing. A lot of their warlord trait, I think, is one particularly where you can choose madness and you can choose sort of random effects, or you can do these things. There's some really fun things they're doing there. That game was quite a punchy one. I mean, they kind of all were really, I suppose, but there was some cool moments in that. That went well for me. There was some. The mission particularly went well in my favour, and I think Nate had some tough rolls as well with that there. But it was a great game. Nate actually went on to get the wooden spoon, but when I spoke to them at the end, he said he had a fantastic weekend. So I mean, it speaks well to kind of Titanicus. You even have a good time when you're not doing so well. I think all of the games I outflanked. Yes, I did. In all the games, I continued to outflank the armigers with a view to keeping them alive, and I think they were good fun that way. I think I would have missed having the additional firepower of the macro Gatling on the Warlord, which was the other debate, was whether I go that or the Power Claw. I just don't think the Power Claw, for me, exudes the threat enough. What was so good with the game against Nate, we had these kind of counter objectives, and he had to keep one of his warhounds alive, and he played that so well, keeping it at the back and having some of the other warhounds do that. He also had one of the most formidable suicide warlords I've ever seen. He launched the warlord with warp displacement, and it had been holding. He put it on one of his assets he brought was the Void Shield array thing. Right, so he had his warlord sat on that, concealment barraged it. It was right in this real aggressive position. He played it really aggressively right up in the front of the Legion. Now, my whole mana pool was kind of angling in on it. The Lancers were off doing their thing to try and outflank, go after the other, and one of the Warhounds was doing that. But the rest of them were trying to act, and it was all pivoting around this warlord. And then the warlord turned it into an absolute missile, threw it into the middle of my line, eventually just flattened a building and a warhound. It was hilarious. The way he played it was so good. Ultimately, I could then maneuver around it and take it out, but it was such a fun way of playing it, while essentially distracting from a meaning I had to deal with that, while he tried to keep his warhound alive. And it was right down to one of the last dice rolls in the game about whether that warhound lived or died, and it did die. But that would have been the swing between a win and a loss. That's Titanicus. It does that so well. We found that, and I've said this to most people talking about it, most of the games came down to one or two dice rolls, which is regardless of kind of how people do it, talking around the whole event. That seems to continually be the way. Third game was against Emma Sweet, who had brought what seems to be my nemesis in these Titanicus events, a lot of warhounds. It was an all warhound list. My first time playing against Audax and all of the shenanigans that they can do. Was it? I think it was a Ferox and a Canis. I think it was the mana pool that you can. Or maybe this is an Audax specific thing. Again, Emma was fantastic at explaining what is actually quite a complicated
one where
set
you
of rules.
put tokens down.
That's the one. Yeah, very, very good at doing that, and actually had a really good way. It had stickers on the heads of her warhound that were these sort of kind of very clear, brightly coloured stickers, like a red star, green star, blue circle, red square, that sort of thing, which made it super clear to work out what squadrons and which mana pools each of the warhounds belong to. That could have been so easy to make almost impenetrable. There, she made some effort in making that super clear to her opponents, and I really appreciated that. I thought it was a really nice touch. Played it really well, and she was on a board as well. We happened to be on a board that made doing that deployment of the sort of concealed deployment, the infiltrating type warhound things that they can do, really difficult, because the stipulation of that is that you have to be able to deploy them. You put these tokens down anywhere on the board outside deployment zone, and you can deploy warhounds. I think it's within 6 inches of those tokens, as long as they are 50% concealed from visibility of the opponent. On this particularly open board that we just had by random, that was made really quite difficult and limited our options. Just played it superbly. Knew how to play those warhounds as absolute knife fighters. I took out a fair few, but she was able to get them in under. I think ultimately, spoilers, I went 3 wins and 2 losses. So I think my game against Emma was a win, but it was a really tight game. It was really close. I was a hard loss against Simon.
So you still brought your armigers on from the flanks? No.
I did, because I knew that she was going to be coming in fast and having to try and get the warhounds to point in multiple directions so that they didn't all just move to outflank my guys. Seemed the way to go. Having the armigers, that was the one I was considering running them around with the lancers, but I did outflank them. She did amusingly turn a warhound round and essentially, I think, shot 2 of them straight out, and then the third one just kind of walked into it, crushed it underfoot. There was quite a nice little narrative behind all of that. The way she quite contemptuously just smeared it to death, but it still caused them to turn around briefly. But yeah, another fun game. Tiring was my feeling coming out of that. It was a tiring day. It's quite intense playing those. None of the games overran. They were all within the time.
Right.
But I found it quite, I found this one quite tiring. And I think other people seem to say the same thing. Maybe that's because it's the slightly larger. It was nearly 2,000 point games. I was reasonably familiar with my list and playing the games. I'd done some trial games. How did you find the previous year after the 3 games on the Saturday? Did you find that tiring?
Fine. Not overly.
No.
I mean, my tournament experience is 5 or 6 game Warhammer events.
Hardcore. Yeah.
So kind of used to that. Only really being really shattered when on the most shattered was playing the change host, which I think I've talked about before on the show, where it was a new army which needed a lot of consideration in moving about stuff. So Titanicus I find kind of fine. I think the games where maybe it's just the games where I needed to be thinking more were playing against better people who were really good at what they were doing, so they were making it hard to win anyway. Don't know.
So that concluded Saturday. There was as is tendency with this event, there's a very good social scene. Groups of people went out after Woods. There was a big social for those who were keen at a local bar and restaurant just around the corner from the venue, and went there. And along with a couple of others, I made some poor life choices in that. Partied a little too hard, maybe had 1 or 2 or 10 too many lemonades, which stretched that evening on into far longer than it should have done, which made the Sunday morning very challenging. Not as challenging as our dear teammate from last year who had to forfeit the first game. I wasn't in that anywhere near that category, but it was a challenging start to the morning. But I did have a lot of fun on the Saturday along with a few others. So Sunday comes around. The first game is against Robert Murray, whose Manipur I had known through the various socials, particularly Instagram. An incredibly brightly coloured, incredibly well painted series of sort of close combat oriented Reavers and Warhounds. They're almost Harlequin like, lots of checks, heraldry.
Right,
They look kind of loyalist. They're not, purely because they're bright colours. They're not. They are a traitor legio that he runs. And they were utterly combat oriented. So I sort of looked at them with very jaded as I was, thinking, this is going to be tough. I'm in trouble here. Rob was one of the nicest guys I'd met at all. He was such a gent. A way of playing was so good at explaining it. I was already a fan of his work, modelling wise. It was very Titanicus in that he got quite unlucky. So now I'm thinking about it. Now I think about my results. I'm definitely lost the game against Emma Sweet. So I lost against Simon Simpkins, beat Nate, definitely lost Emma Sweet, beat Robert Murray. Reason for that was because he came storming across and he was playing some absolute blinders of some maneuvers. His use of concealment barrage and placing it just in the right spot to be able to run, to be able to warp displace his Reaver through my Warhound into the cloud was just, or rather around the Warhound and into the cloud was brilliant. He said he'd been really struggling with a close combat, almost exclusive Manipur, because he said it either does really well and he gets in and does and punches up, but does it do enough damage quickly enough? Generally, he was getting punished, and it was getting things that were surviving to get through into combat.
Sure.
Were sufficiently damaged that they weren't able to stay the course and clinch the win. Yeah. Similar thing happened in this. He gets about halfway across the board. There's a few things that are looking dangerous, really dangerous, thinking, if this goes through. Using the support warlord, which is obviously a new thing for me compared to my normal 2 brawlers. The support warlord with the Quake Cannon, the Bellicosum, and the other supporting fire from the other parts of the maniple, forced a kill of one of his 3 Reavers. Was it 4 Reavers? Doesn't matter. One of the Reavers. He had 2 Reavers running as a pair right next to each other. One of those Reavers goes bang and proceeds to fall back onto its friend, killing it as well. So suddenly he's lost 2 Reavers that were the central thrust of his attack, and he suddenly then got 2 Warhounds, which are looking very lonely on that side. He's got an Asterius behind them, so the firepower is still formidable. But it's there, and he just, through the luck of a collision going a particular way and a reactor going up in a certain way, suddenly he's looking much more vulnerable, and he basically wasn't able to turn it around from that point. And this was, he and I both had these competing. He wasn't expecting me to come towards him. My objective choices were try to destroy as many of him as possible. So it kind of spiraled a bit from there.
Sure.
Great fun game. I would recommend, on the back of that game in particular, I would recommend the Swarmer Warhound and Support Warlord in this list. The Swarmer Warhound seems to just punch above its weight so much. I found it so useful. It just had the ability to it was typically the last rocket always going in from that just take that extra health point off. It take the other whole point off and kill things. Super, super handy as it was in there. It was such a good utility, Warhound. And the ability for the Warhounds to break off. I would find playing a Reaver list, I think, very difficult.
I find having the anchors of the warlords and then the warhounds being able to nip around and redeploy so useful, as it definitely did in that game. Armigers, yet again, outflanked and got absolutely flattened almost as soon as they arrived, thanks to the Asterius. Asterius and Porphyron's very good counters to the sneaky little Armigers trying to do their thing. Not entirely surprisingly, but brilliant, fun game, and a real gent to accept my hungover ways in the morning, despite my apologies. Fifth and final game in the afternoon of Sunday was against the similarly great guy, James Cheesewright. He had a Metallica, Legio Metallica Extergamus maniple, and I nominated him for my best painted last year. It's still one of the best Legio Metallica representations I've seen, helped by the fact that he's got these two. He had the sort of mirror of the Lancers for me. He had these two Lancers painted up as the House Crast in that classic Titan Legions epic second edition color scheme with the blue and the yellow and the white. Yeah, brilliant. Looks incredible. By this point, I'm running on fumes. I'm low on energy, and I'm just going to do silly things here. I'm just going to throw stuff at him. It's an Extergamus. He's probably going to blow me off the board here. Let's see what happens. So chose the honor thy forebears, I think it is as the objective. So put the flag on my Senioris. It was not the right one to do. It would have made much more sense on the support warlord. Thought I'm just going to go running at it. Again, Titanicus being Titanicus turned out actually quite effective. He neutered my Lancers incredibly well, who would have been, I think, a problem running up one of the flanks. The ability for the conversion beamer and the quake cannons to just shake them and pin them. Yeah, very good. Very good play. He also played his one support warhound extremely well, drawing fire all the time. But my warlord and the Regia is so good, particularly with the Storum, for soaking up firepower like crazy, using these warhounds as shield batteries.
Yeah.
So running up the middle, running the gauntlet effectively, this three warlords and an Extergamus staring down the barrel of that, with one warlord and two warhounds kind of running into that, and then eventually the third warhound being thrown in as well to try and boost the shields. Is so effective at soaking up firepower, and the return fire from my warlord just managed to effectively one-shot hit his counterpoint warlord across the board, the brawler warlord in front of me.
Right.
And that was the overcharged cannon. The overcharged cannon, a couple of lucky rolls, it hits the head, 3 crits. You're like, okay, right.
Yeah, it doesn't take much. It's hitting the right location.
Yeah.
And then it doesn't take much of a spike in luck to really do something.
No, it was a relatively... It was a swing of luck, but it was relatively minor. It wasn't a real outlier. And the same with blowing the shields. Like that you'd only have to make a few more saves. He'd also played, as in this came up a few times actually. I think it was at least twice over the weekend. Is it called Cursed Earth? The stratagem that means that every shield save you make, you have to make one additional shield save on top of, which means your shields generally are going down a bit, but the resilience of the Regia combined with the Storum's additional Servitor Clade rerolls meant I was just generally keeping shields up that much more. So yeah, great game, great positioning. Thought he'd won it, thought I'd lost it because he managed to kill. I just couldn't stop the final charge of the Lancers, and it turns out thermal mines not as good. And generally, the utility of Earthshaker mines, which I didn't have, would have made a lot more sense. Thermal mines, pretty cool for finishing things off, but I needed something to be able to put a quake on those Lancers, and that would have made a real difference. As it was, he was able to get a charge in, which I just could not do anything about. There was no contingency I could play, or maneuvers or otherwise. Managed to charge in and kill a quite severely damaged, admittedly, warlord,
which meant I dropped the banner. I thought you didn't get any points for that. But actually, as long as there are no enemy units within 8 inches, you get points for that. And that turned what would have been a loss into a victory, which I didn't realise. So actually, initially reported that as a loss, but had to change that result later on when James very kindly pointed out. He said, "No, you do get points for that." So yeah, was fairly shattered after all of that, but 5 great games again, and was really pleased with it. And I think the shattered was more a comment on or just life in general leading up to going to an event like this and the roles and responsibilities I now have, rather than the list. It was a list I was familiar with, which I would recommend to anyone going into a tournament, and would highly recommend Titanicus tournaments to anyone. I just think they're just so much fun, just as a game inherently is. Any questions?
So your list after that chat, do you think you got to the right decisions having gone to the event?
I do, because it was a mixture of effective, and the armigers were I think I could have probably had a slightly more effective list if I'd have probably taken the 3 lancers.
Right, yeah.
I wouldn't have enjoyed playing it as much.
Okay.
I enjoyed the slight thing, but it wasn't a thing of I'm enjoying this, but but sacrificing a substantial kind of performance. Like, this is still an effective list, but I've got this fun little weird little thing that is doing as well, which is sort of suboptimal. But who cares? Because it's really fun. But it's not. It's only 85 points that I'm doing that with. They're doing that slightly quirky thing with. So yeah, for the objectives I set myself and the way I wanted to play the game, it was where I wanted it to be. I think I would have been frustrated had I taken the claw for the way I tend to play this list, even though I found myself in close quarters frequently with things, and maybe that would have been different had people been concerned about a claw on a warlord. So maybe that would have been different. But for the way I play it, I was really happy with that, and I really did find that conversation we had really helpful for evaluating that, because you can get yourself a bit lost and you're doing it in your own head and similar. I found that really useful, so I would encourage people to do that with their gaming group or people if they're going to an event. It's a very useful chat, I think, to be able to have if you get the opportunity.
Cool. So you liked your support warlord?
I did.
You did. You didn't think you missed the second up in the grill?
No. I discussed this with Simon because we'd played in the previous year, the previous event, the same thing, and he said he remembered that list, playing against my list of that, and finding the mid-board threat utterly formidable. So yeah, there is that, but I found the additional utility of the support warlord. It sort of feels weird holding this warlord back, who didn't really move a great deal at all in any of the games. But the extra utility of that ranged fire, that's a really effective loadout as well. I think those other weapons, as much as I would have liked to have some of the slightly more esoteric conversion beamer or the grav cannon or something, I just don't think they're as good. I think that's a very good weapons loadout that seemed to do a lot. So yeah, I found that very effective.
Yeah, I think you can overlook something like that, and if we put that across to any game system, you can see whatever it is in whatever. Maybe it's an auto cannons on the target that you're never going to aim at big tanks in Heresy or what have you. That it's not flashy and it's not so you're not making the most of the like that big weapon that can make that big effect, but it's reliable. It has effects like the quake. Did the quake come up much on the Mori?
Yeah, it did. It was super useful. That it really threw people about, literally and metaphorically. And the fact that you're not piling heat on as well.
Yeah. again, reliability within that as well. And also, it's another thing that you don't need that mental load to go, oh shoot, do I want to fire that? What do I want to do with this guy? Well, actually, he's got the weapons where he can shoot anything. I say I don't have to worry about heat with him. I can concentrate on, maybe you bring in stratagems to reduce heat, but they don't need to be played on them anymore. Because again, does that dude need many stratagems? Probably not. He just gets on with his job. So your hand is then utilized on fewer other machines, which allow you a bit more play because you know what you're doing there. You've got much more control.
You tended to be people would still would send fire towards it, would put some fire to, which would be then reducing the load on the others, but found it very difficult because typically the Swarmer Warhound was sitting beside him, and those two to combining their shields is really effective.
Also, I mean, even without combining shields, a Warlord takes some taking down unless you get.
Really does, yeah.
Particularly at range, because at range you generally haven't got the weapons that you can aim in the same way. So your Bellicosa can hit it, but you're rolling that die to see where you hit. So it's commitment to take that out, and all the while you're committing to taking that out, then you've got these troops moving up the board, which particularly your other warlord, you don't want an overcharged cannon shooting point blank into you, because again, as we said, only takes 2 or 3 good results on the armor pen, and you've crippled a Titan. So and smaller Titans, you've destroyed a Titan.
Yeah.
So it's about, I say, I said it last time, but it's about providing, most GW games are about presenting multiple problems, so that becomes not a good option for the opponent. In target acquisition, 40k very much used to be all about target acquisition. What am I taking down first? How am I doing it? Maybe that's changed a little bit now. AT, slightly less so, is more about your maneuverability, but it's still about, okay, target number one, identifying it, making sure you've got the tools to do it, but that's in your army selection, but then making sure they're actually able to do it on the tabletop by positioning them and what have you. And we didn't really talk about stratagems much last time, and that's a major part of AT, because if you've got 2 or 3 stratagems you want to use because you really like using them, like if you're playing traitors, warp displacement is, it's a major card. It's a major ability to be able to do, and it can change a game. I'm not sure how I feel about it. I'm not sure how I feel about concealment barrages in terms of how they affect the game and the shenanigans that can go off around it. I think the ability to hide in them and then charge out next turn with very little that you can do as the enemy. Not in every case, don't get me wrong. I'm talking wide generalizations here. I think there's you've got a little bit of a potential feel bad within that. So maybe I'd look for some extra negative to the concealment barrage, maybe, because I don't care if it goes up in points. Like, it's still, particularly when it comes to objective play as well. I can do this, and you basically can't do anything about my Titan being in here. It's, I get it. They can be fun, but it's a bit. It can cause, as I say, those negative play experiences. And I think what it really does do is, like, that kind of combo magnifies when you get players of different skill levels. Like, it's all very well an experienced player playing against it, even if they're not very good, because okay, I know what happens here. But if you've got someone who's like, oh, okay, cool, I can put pressure on. What happened there? Why are you behind me? It's a different beast.
I certainly found it easier to
have you'd sort of think that the two brawlers would have been easier to have these to support each other. I actually found it easier to be able to make the two have the kind of combined firepower, with one being a support one, and there it was easier. I would have expected to be able to get it, but actually manoeuvring two warlords in the midfield with terrain, with Titans moving around in the way they were, they tended to operate independently. They didn't. And equally, if you did bring them together, it was almost overkill, as you were putting in two lots of 12 macro Gatlings, or they might have been under the guns by that point. It was actually much easier to have them support, not each other per se, but the ranged one was always able to put fire down against the other warlord's opponents. And you think actually those two complemented each other rather better than having two of the same, which I thought would have been a better fit.
The right levels of support for each.
Yeah.
Did you find yourself split firing at all with the long range one, or was it
No, not with the long range one. I did do that with the midfield one because particularly against Emma's list, because the Warhounds were up under the guns. Yeah. That was quite effective, where you could use the Gatlings on the roof against. It was a direwolf actually, which was proving very threatening, and then the arm guns against those that were getting in very close. Yeah. Didn't use it as much as I expected. Did use the long retreat, which I thought I would use a lot last time. I think I used it twice this time, and it was very effective. It got me out of some real sticky positions. One against Nate, where the super warlord was coming in like an absolute warp missile, and was able to move her around and to the side and behind it almost immediately as a result. And okay, that's very, very handy. And it got me out of some trouble elsewhere as well, which I thought I would use a lot more, particularly when the arcs were so critical when I had the two midfield warlords, and I didn't use it once in the whole weekend. Maybe that was a mistake, but this time I used it and it was really super handy. Seems good value as well. I think it's only one stratagem point. Anyway, it seemed very effective for what it does.
For sure. Cool. Yeah. Sounds great. I mean,
had a great time.
Next year, I hope to be there again. I don't know which one I'm going to play, but
the people were asking how do we do it, and I said with Adepticon on the horizon as well. That was always going to be a bit of a push to do two. But it'd be great to have done a good showing from Heresy players. I'll need to send you some photos. Actually, there's some superb looking boards. The guys who put the terrain together for that. The terrain for Titanicus was good. I mean, it was a huge event for Titanicus to have that much Titanicus terrain. It took kind of 3 lots of clubs and groups pooling their terrain to be able to do it.
Right.
So that looks good. The boards look great and were very playable. There was a reasonable amount of variation as well. There was some more dense urban terrains, more open terrain. So you felt like you were getting a good set of variety over the weekend, but not, oh dear, I'm playing the difficult board. You didn't get that feel. Yeah, the Heresy games looked great. The forces they had looked top notch. Big games. It felt like really big games that they were playing. And really impressive. They had a Prospero board, an incredible industrial looking thing with floating islands going on. Sigmar and 40k were both represented in big ways, but I didn't get around those very much. I didn't get as much chance to look around the event as much as I wanted. The Cult of Paint guys were there. Maximal Fire did a good job. I think switching to singles made sense, but based on what we discussed after last year, I think it suits them where the direction they were going more, and it felt slightly more. It felt like they tweaked a few things to really smooth out that experience. There wasn't the it just felt there's a little few quality of life adjustments in it. So I thought overall it was a good event. Good prizes at the end. There was the Titan Walk at the end. So there's photos out there of the many, many, many Titans that were there. If anyone can reach it, I would recommend Beachhead to anyone, either as an event or just something just to walk around, even if you're not doing a tournament or otherwise. But as I say, I've said it before, I really appreciated our conversation last time. I think that was really useful.
Oh, well, something I'm sure we'll revisit over time. What was really strange is seeing, I said, you alluded to it earlier, but seeing that photo and me seeing a face I haven't seen for
Yeah.
a dozen years. And I'm like, that guy called Ed, because he is a really good modeler who used to be around Tunbridge Wells. And I haven't seen him for a very long time. And there he is, a Titanicus event, so maybe I'll catch him somewhere.
He came up to me. I ended up chatting to him at the bar in one of the events afterwards, and got chatting to him. And I keep saying it with these people at this one, but we got on like a house fly because he's such a cool guy.
Yeah,
couldn't have been nicer. I think there's a real argument for tournaments like that, particularly to encourage, if not require, people to wear badges with both their actual name on, because you tend to forget people's names very quickly over an event when you've got 50 or so people you're mixing with, and have their online username. Because I know Ed, because I found out after the event, I know your work, and it's superb. I think it looks amazing. He's done a fantastic. He just posted well after the event, actually about a week ago. He posted. He's been working on a Legio Metallica force, but that is a complete homage to the 90s era epic second edition Legios, because they were painted up. The Games Workshop's kind of poster child was the death of a rubricist.
That sounds about Rubra.
Yeah, I'm probably murdering that.
Death underscore of a underscore under a
That's
underscore rubricist. There we go. Oh, he's got 10,500 followers.
And I can see why, because it looks awesome.
This is a guy who, he donkeys years ago made an Adeptus, oh, blimey, a Mars Force. My head's gone. It's too late. And way before 40k had come out with anything, and every few months would see a link to a rumor about a Mars faction coming for 40k, and he'd click the link with utmost excitement to find pictures of his own models everywhere, and people were treating it as rumors, which was always so funny, to be fair. Bless him. But they were really good. Adeptus Mechanicus, that's the word.
I followed his work. I recognised his style afterwards, and suddenly put two and two together. I was like, oh, I wish I'd. Amusingly, we actually did a similar, much smaller version of that happened, because we were talking, and he'd introduced himself, and he said he was having a wonderful time. He hadn't been to an event like that before, or for a very long time, and he was really enjoying it. So we were just sharing stories about that, and he was talking to a mutual friend who I knew before, Mike Lester, who won a Warbreaker amazingly in the opening moments of the event, which was fun. He was chatting, and he said, the hobby standard here is so high, which for him to be saying that, at that point I didn't know his hobby caliber, which I did. I wish I had, but he was there saying the standard of this event is amazing. It's so good, and he had photos on his phone he'd taken of all the maniples, because everyone had set them up for the painting competition. And my friend Grant, who lives up the road, walked away with the best painted for his Legio Praesagius, and they did look amazing. Incredible display board he did for them as well. Real diorama type.
Grant's Instagram again that people know?
Diadrin. Worth a look, because he really did document the development of those in there, and there's some great photos there. Diredrin, Diadrin. Yeah, Ed was saying, he said there's amazing hobby work here, and he's like, including this. He said they're all good. This one's great. This one's great. He said this is the one that I got my best painted vote. This guy called Howard. He said he's done some amazing stuff. I love this store. I'm like, I'm quietly grinning. Mike's grinning from ear to ear. He's like, not bad. Yeah, could have done better with this. But it's very kind of you, Ed. Those are my ones. He had no idea. Again, the lack of the name badges would have avoided those kind of slightly weird moments where you're like, am I talking about you? Is that what's
interesting one? Isn't it? Well, everyone should be forced to wear shirts with
Yeah, exactly.
Handles on the back, yeah, something
But
like that.
definitely check out Daedrin and Death of a Rubricist. Yeah, he's got a real pedigree of cool stuff.
Awesome stuff. Right, should we leave that there then?
I could talk for hours. Probably best I don't.
So can I. Yeah, Ivan, perfect. Cheers, Howard.
Cheers, man.
Congratulations, you've made it to the end of another episode of the Imperial Truth podcast. Thanks for listening. As usual, if you've got any feedback, if you've got any questions, please email greg@theimperialtruth.com or go to the Facebook page, the Twitter, the Instagram. They're all in the show notes, but fairly easy to find as well. Imperial_truth on Twitter, at Child of Fang on Instagram. And yeah, give us some feedback. Let us know what we want to talk about. Obviously, we've got Adepticon coming up, so who knows what we're going to see there. Fingers crossed we're going to get something big shown off. But yeah, your guess is as good as mine, I suppose. But yeah, fingers crossed. Saying that, I am going to be at Adepticon. I'll be wandering around. If you want to say hi, please feel free. I'm going to be in all kinds of various rooms, I'm sure. We'll have to see how that goes. We've also got something kind of really cool happening in April. So, providing everything goes through, just started to get the first bits through on this little project that's happening. So, we'll be able to announce that next show as well. If you'd like to support the show, we have Element Games and Battle Bling. The links are in the show notes for them. If you want to buy, if you're in the UK and want to buy toys, then Element Games is a great shop to buy them from, and you can support the show for doing that as well. I'm not sure there's much more. I'm absolutely sure that I'm missing something, but I'm not sure there's much more to say beyond that. I'm actually going to try and get some painting done once I've finished speaking here and started to edit the show. You never know, it might happen. Thank you for a couple of people who've since between recording the first part and this part have actually said, hey, are you painting, etc., etc. It's really appreciated, honestly. So yeah, thank you for that. Anyway, I think that's probably us done. So until next time, you have been listening to The Imperial Truth.